Hello and welcome to the Reuters Institute Global Journalism Seminar Series. I'm Mira Salva and I'm really pleased to have with us today Borja Echevarría from El País. He's the managing editor of El País, one of Spain's best newspapers. It was founded in 1976 and the printed edition has long been the most read in Spain. The reason I've asked Borja to join us today is because last year, just as the pandemic was about to launch, El País launched a subscription model and has had a hell of a year where they have grown incredibly in the middle of a pandemic. There's a huge amount to learn here about building trust, using data both in your stories and to understand your audiences, and crucially doing good journalism and using that as the basis of growth. I suspect a lot of their success has been due to Borja, who joined El País or rejoined El País in 2018 from Univision. He was also vice president in charge of digital at Univision and a Neiman's fellow before that, and again has been at the forefront of this technology for years. Borja, thank you so much. We're going to have you speak to us for 20 minutes and then we'll go to Q&A, and as normal, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box, and I'll put them to the speaker as the seminar progresses. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mira, and thank you to the Reuters Institute for inviting me. Yeah, and it's already a year now, and now it's today, 17th of February. I look back at February 2020, and right at this point, we were about to launch our subscription model after 2-3 years of preparation. We had marked a specific date, the 1st of March. The previous months at El País, they had been really stressful with important changes in the newsroom, but also important changes in technology. During the months of December, November, 3-4 months before El País changed its CMS, it moved to ARC, the Washington Post CMS, and as you all know, and the people that work in newsroom, how painful it is to go through this process of changing your CMS. So we were changing at the same time our organization, the newsroom, how we are organized, trying to move faster. This has been going on for a decade. To being more digital. I mean, that's going on and on. At the same time, we were changing our technology, and we were about to change our business model. But if you remember, at the end of January, the World Health Organization declares a public emergency. By the end of February, the CDC says COVID is heading towards a pandemic status. And in the newsroom in El País, we had our first COVID case at the end of February. Someone that had traveled to Milan to the fashion shows, came back with COVID. So just a week before we were going to launch, all the conversation started changing in the company. So we started to hesitate. We started asking ourselves those questions: should we launch? Should we wait? There were heated discussions during that time of people that were in favor of launching the 1st of March and taking advantage of the pandemic. They thought that if we launch, it would be a great moment to capture subscribers. And then on the other side, we thought maybe it would be a better idea to wait a couple of months, see how the situation was going on, and also strategically, even from a pragmatic perspective, some of us thought that it would be a good idea to connect with the audience in a deeper way if something so big was coming, to establish like a strong relation with the audience. So finally, we made the call and we decided to wait. And we decided to wait until the 1st of May. So everything was planned. There was a marketing campaign going on. All the business plans were built to launch that month of March. But you know, this is a long-term bet. We thought we could spend those months showing the importance of the kind of journalism we do, and in many ways, I think the coronavirus, instead of the traditional marketing campaigns, the COVID became our best communication and marketing campaign. Just to explain it, everybody, the people that don't know what kind of paywall El País has a metered paywall. You can read right now 10 articles for free every month before you hit the wall. I'm gonna give some numbers. They are not really public. Please don't tweet too much.
Everything is on the record here. So.
No, it's on the record. I know it's on the record. You can tweet. But El País has already surpassed 90,000 subscribers, all digital subscribers, after 9 months with our new model. We're really looking to that moment when we are gonna reach 100,000 subscribers. I think it's gonna come pretty soon, much earlier than when we get to our first anniversary. So, and beside those digital-only subscribers, El País has around 45,000 print subscribers that also have access to our digital product. So we have right now more than double digital subscribers only in 9 months since we launched. So, and if we look back at those discussions, if we should have launched the 1st of March or the 1st of, I mean, who cares really right now? Really, probably we would have right now 20,000 more subscribers. But this is a project that is looking, I mean, really to change the whole organization for decades. So when you look back on how those debates were so heated, I mean, it really doesn't change anything, you know? So I truly believe that was a good decision to wait. During the month of March and April, we didn't put up our paywall, but we started testing with our audience the possibility that if they wish, they could subscribe. We kind of played, like during 2 months, a kind of membership model, a kind of the Guardian model. We did something mixed. Okay, we are not going to put a paywall, but if you want to support us, you can do it. That kind of model, the membership model, is not a model that matches very well with El País. But I mean, we start like trying to understand how the audience was gonna react. During the month of March and April, we had our biggest traffic in the history of El País. In April 2020, we achieved 180 million unique browsers. People in Spain were locked down. They were thirsty for information, thirsty for trustful information. They were potential subscribers. And in some way, we were like generating kind of an addiction to news before we launched the paywall. So remember April, people locked down in their houses, or they were watching Netflix, or they were cooking, or they were looking for news. That's what they were doing. So the same people, they were coming and coming and coming. And so when we launched the 1st of May, really people had like the need of continue being informed, no? And we had generated that kind of addiction I was speaking about, no? So I think it was also important that before launching our subscription and our paywall, for more than a year, we have been using a registration model at El País before we put up the paywall. So now El País has more than 3.5 million people registered. And as we now experience, this is the previous step for someone to decide to become a subscriber. So that decision a year and a half before launching the paywall of going not aggressively, but we were doing this little by little, of putting up a registration paywall. That has given us a lot of success to the model we are right now, no? And I think beside all these strategic business product question, I think we were very lucky with something that is purely editorial. I mean, lucky in a way, but that's what El País is, that it matched perfectly with the moment, and it matched perfectly with the ambition of the model we were launching. First of all, El País is a global newspaper with the biggest network of correspondents in the Spanish-speaking world. El País has, in Mexico, has a newsroom of 30 people. In Brazil, a newsroom of nearly 20 people. We have correspondents in China, all over Europe. So El País is one of those newspapers that after the crisis in 2007, we never backed up in terms of cultivating that network of correspondents. So the pandemic is fundamentally a global story. So you need journalists with boots on the ground in China, in Italy, UK, Mexico, and in Brazil. So that was very important for us. At the same time, the pandemic is a health and science story, and El País has a very strong team of journalists fully dedicated to cover these topics with a lot of experience, like journalists that I would say in between science and health, we have around, I would say 10, 12 journalists that they are fully dedicated to these topics, and that's in terms of comparison in the Spanish market and in the Spanish-speaking market. That's, I mean, I'm sure it's like nearly double of what the next newspaper has. And that was also a big part of that success. So we're global. We were already betting on this kind of topics, and I think we were, and I would say this is a little bit of luck. Just like 6 months before the pandemic, we started rebuilding all our data and visualization team. So for many years, El País infographics team was very much focused on print. It had been really challenging to move that team from a print culture to a digital culture. But after the summer of 2019, we made that decision. We brought someone from the Wall Street Journal, an infographics guy that he had already worked at El País before, but he was now part of the Wall Street Journal team with digital skills, and we put in charge. We put this guy in charge of the infographics team and of the data team. And the mandate was digital, digital, digital. You have to change completely the approach, the priorities, etc. So that change was crucial for us because when the pandemic arrived in March, we had time enough to change the dynamics of something that would become critical. That is, how do you inform with so many data? And remember, not so much now. I am feeling right now that people are really tired of numbers, data, even COVID news. Oh, so you can feel it. And I was right now before this seminar in a meeting the direction of El País, talking that we were feeling and that people were getting tired, of the same dynamics. But at the beginning of March, April, people were looking for data. People were looking for trustworthy information, and the role that our data team and afterwards our visualization team, how they would make all this information comprehensive, it was so important. And if I look right now at the numbers of 2020, maybe from the top 20 stories last year, I would say maybe 14, 15 stories are done by this team. So that was a huge success, and the combination of all these points in a moment where we needed trustful journalism and very mission-driven journalism, that was like kind of the best strategic decision we made. So as I said before, this is a long-distance race, and now we're facing big challenges. I'm just gonna tell some of those challenges we're facing right now. Near 9 months in our subscription model. I mean, the first one, I don't know if the most important one, but the one that has changed everything is working at home, of course. And what is the impact of working at home? I think from a journalistic perspective, I think the newsroom is doing pretty well. I don't see this like a big deal right now, but the biggest challenge is when you're changing the strategy, the whole strategy, moving from an audience-driven strategy to a subscription strategy that involves all the pieces of the company. It's not only about the newsroom, it's about the newsroom, it's about the product team, it's about the technology team, it's about the business side. And you need everybody to be aligned and go in the same direction. People that usually don't sit in the same table. So this is being really challenging. And you feel the importance and the risks of different teams going in different directions, because or they don't get all the information, or it's very difficult to communicate in a company that is very silos based in terms of culture. This is something we're trying to break, but the culture is very silos based. So it is a little bit challenging to do all this transformation working at home. Communication, if you're changing your strategy, both from that editorial perspective and from a business perspective, you need to have everyone very well informed. And I think you have to over-communicate. So this is one of the biggest challenges that we have. As so many journalistic companies, we don't communicate very well inside of the company. And this is a very big challenge, and it's so important. I think the communications teams, they are starting to have a new role inside of the companies, that it's not only communicate outside, it's a lot of communicating inside of the companies and facilitate these relations between the silos. So we're working on that. It's a big challenge. To be honest, print is still a challenge. No, we have been for a decade talking about digital transformation, going digital first. And the reality in El País, and I speak so many times with colleagues at places that seem that they have already done that transition. The Times, the Post. I mean, I think the reality is that the burden of print in terms of culture, processes is still there. But it's now or never. now or never. My feeling is that, or we accelerate, because I mean, as we all know, in everything in our lives, this pandemic has accelerated everything. How much? 3 years, 4 years? How we buy, how we connect to our friends, how we consume news. No, it's like if we were right now in 2025. So we can't afford anymore print to be a burden. I think print can still play a role in a newspaper like El País, but you have to be very careful that it doesn't have a negative impact in the way you work, in your transformation, etc. Another challenge is that we're having launched 9 months ago and being at home, we're redesigning all our dashboards, KPIs, and trying to explain to the newsroom that what we were looking at a year ago, page views, unique browsers, I mean, it's not, and you have to be very careful with what you say. It's not that it doesn't matter, it still matters. I mean, we still have a strong advertisement business, but we need, and I think you need to make a call. You need to prioritize. What are your priorities? Even though probably our business is still not based on a subscription model, in terms of working, you cannot wait. You cannot wait. The same way you couldn't wait when print was still the main part of the business, but you knew you had to change. You have to change before. So we're changing all those KPIs. And probably I would say the biggest challenge right now, and we knew that this was going to happen. It's not something that came by surprise. You know, the good part of being a little bit late to get into a subscription model, like it has happened in general in Spain, that you have a lot of experience from others. And before we launched, when we could still travel, I spent a couple of weeks in New York, in the Times, in the Guardian, and everybody was telling me the same thing. Be prepared with the tension that you're gonna feel between the advertisement teams and the subscription teams. And I think right now, this is the biggest challenge that we are facing. How you align everybody in one direction, and how the different KPIs from the people that are more involved in a subscription model versus the people that are still involved in an advertising model that connects much more to volume, to traffic. That tension, we're feeling it right now, no? We knew it was coming, but I think it's like a big challenge to be clear what are your priorities, and at the same time, looking at the short term, because we are a company that delivers results every month, and the long term, because we know where we're going. So those are the challenges. What are we doing with this? What are the strategic decisions we're taking? How we're reorganizing? As I said, we are accelerating that process of digitalization. That means important changes inside of the newsroom, in the organization, creating new roles in the company. Just quick example. We still didn't have at El País someone in charge of newsletters. We have a lot of newsletters. We have like 35 newsletters that are being done by different sections of different people, but we didn't have a person that was strategically looking at newsletters as something important. So a couple of weeks ago, we opened the position and we communicate to the whole newsroom, hey, this is an important position that we are creating inside of the newsroom. So we are doing these kind of movements very, very quickly. And also, we are rebuilding the way the newsroom, the business side, and technology relates to each other. So now more and more people from different parts of the company, we are participating in a daily basis in the same meetings. That didn't happen before. And we have abandoned, and this has been kind of a big thing in Spain, we have abandoned Comscore as the way we measure ourselves and we tell the story of our audience. We felt it didn't reflect the reality of our audience, so we have quit from being measured by Comscore. What else? We are in the middle of a redesign process. We are looking maybe 6 more months, a website that reflects much more that we're working for subscribers, and that has a lot of implications. And I think we will be launching by the end of July a new and completely revamped website at El País. Production is also a hot topic. That's a hot topic. I know many newspapers have gone through this dilemma. Our feeling, it's not only a feeling, we have the numbers that we produce too much content still, too much. No, we were in that kind of dynamic. We produce too much. We have a lot of verticals. I think that's something we are looking at. How many sub-brands El País needs to have. We believe that a subscription model is much more about reinforcing your main brand than diluting your brand in 20 sub-brands, blogs, and all kind of names. So that's something we are right now working, and in the next weeks, I'm sure we are making decisions of closing certain brands and putting the focus, focusing much more. So, and I think one very interesting thing we have done in the last couple of months, we created inside of the newsroom an editorial strategy team. So that works very close with me. You know, we're not very used in the newsroom to stop and think. No, it has always been like running, making decisions. But I think we cannot afford anymore not to have time to stop and think and to look in 1 month, 2 months. So we have created a small team of three persons. One of them is someone much more focused in audience. So everything we're looking at, we look at from an editorial perspective, but of course with a lot of data. We have a lot of data nowadays, so it would be stupid not to look at that data. So these are the kind of changes we're doing right now. I mean, maybe I should stop. I can go on and on.
No, I've got loads of questions, so if it's okay, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Questions. Thank you so much. Okay. It's really, really fascinating, though. My first biggest question is that who are the subscribers? You know, what's their profile? Is it what you expected? And who are you using?
It is really what we expected. Mm-hmm. It's kind of dangerous at the same time, and I mean, El País has a very loyal audience. El País occupies in Spain, in terms of sociological description, it's more a progressive audience, but kind of not at all radical, kind of institutional. I think it's the broadest part of our society. I think it's progressive, but in the center, no? And but at the same time, we have an old audience, and probably too masculine. So the first chunks of our subscribers they reflect very much the profile of our print subscribers, but a little bit younger, I would say. No, so it's a very urban, a little bit too masculine, a little bit too old, quite global, and I think that's a difference, a big difference in between El País and the rest of the Spanish outlets, both digital native or legacy. I think it's the newspaper, probably the only newspaper that has a strong audience in Latin America, but also in Europe. So we have been pretty successful in terms of the amount of subscribers we are getting from outside Spain. I think we have a huge opportunity there. We need to do some changes because when we launched last May, the price of our subscription was exactly the same all over the world. So it will cost $10 a month in Spain and in Colombia. And that was more for technological reasons, and we changed that. I think 4 months ago. We adapt the prices to. At the beginning, it was very simple. We couldn't adapt the prices to different countries, so we changed that. And right now, price in Mexico or in Colombia is half of the price that it's in Europe. So, we believe we have a huge opportunity outside Spain. Spain, of course, we have a roof. Spain has 45 million citizens, and we have a roof.
Thank you.
We have 400 million people that speak Spanish in the world.
Yeah, are you going after the younger audiences in Spain as well? Would you consider differentiating price? It's quite hard to do, I think.
Yeah, we should. There's a long way to go.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go. No, I think if we want to get closer to younger audiences, we have to do a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And we have to really, really think in who are they, what they need, what topics do they care of. Some of the things we are doing, for example, climate change, environment, and all those. So we are betting in those kind of topics that we believe we are gonna connect more with younger audience. But I think in part it's about the topic, in part it's about the tone and how you relate to them. In part it's about the platform. Where are they? How can El País have its own voice on Instagram and don't be ridiculed at the same time, because you're trying to reach. I don't think reaching to young audiences, it's all about TikTok. I don't think so. Because someone with 25, when I'm talking about young audiences, I'm not talking about people. I think someone right now under 45, that I consider that, maybe because we're.
This is very European. We're in Europe.
Yeah, but I think it's a challenge. 40 years old people, it's a challenge. Not easy to reach them. No? So yeah, we are working on that. But I truly believe that is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and it's one face.
And that is the biggest challenge. And of course, there are risks of like the kind of risk of like that old guy that starts speaking like that young guy, and it seems, and it's not real. So I mean, one important thing, you need young people in the newsroom also. If you want to speak to their peers, not only about the tone, what do they care about? No? And as you know, these kind of legacies organizations, I mean, the average age is really not too young.
You're answering all my questions, actually, because I was going to ask you about the profile of the newsroom. I'll go to the question from the audience, and just to reiterate, please type them in the Q&A box, not the chat function, because I'll see them there. You talked a great deal about trying to launch this new strategy in the middle of a pandemic, but also running a legacy newsroom with all that entails. And there's two questions on this, one from Wolfgang Blau, which is, what's the interaction between the journalists and the data? So do your journalists get feedback on how their stories are helping readers convert into subscribers? How does this work? And you also started with a very interesting point about the editorial strategy team of 24 people, and you said one looks at audience, and I just need to know what the others were.
And both questions, they are very much connected. You know, I think the way the newsroom was being fed with data, you know, I'm not sure if it was the right way. That kind of, every morning you get in your inbox the data of the day before, and without context, without action points, without recommendations, I think people at one point they start not looking at those kind of mails. So part of the idea of building a strategic team with people that are very editorial, that understand digital, that they're very editorial, that were part of the newsroom, but that they understand like all the digital ecosystem, is to start talking about data with the newsroom in a completely different way. I don't think there is a need to get, at least not to most of the newsroom, maybe to managers or whatever, but to get data every morning at 9 a.m. in your inbox. No, I think you have to speak in a more strategic way every 2 weeks. So that's what we're trying to do, like to put much more context in what is going on in the decisions. As I said before, we're changing all the dashboards in the newsroom because we have changed our priorities, and that's part of the work. You know, it's data. It has its risks. I mean, I'm a true believer in giving data. I mean, people are mature, and you just have to communicate in the right way. But I have also seen in many newsrooms, and I've worked in different places, where a bad communication of the data can have like very, very bad results. So I would say data, yes, with context, with a lot of context.
I mean, this is kind of true. You're selling good journalism. That's the fundamental message you're selling, and that has to be communicated to the newsroom as well as outside. And just linked to that question of Peter Deli in Hungary, which is you're at a fairly early stage, and what do you think is the main driver of subscription? So do you think readers view this as a transactional relationship where they're giving you money and you're providing information, or is it something more complex? Are they paying for your ideals or your values? So how are you selling it to the readers as well?
We are not selling it as a transaction, and I think that wouldn't be the right approach, mostly in the beginning, because to the people that you are speaking, as he said or she said, listen very well, we're in the very early stages, and we're right now capturing as subscribers the people that really believe in the mission of El País, in the ideas of El País, in how we think about transgenders, or how we think, or how we inform about, or if they feel that we are not polarized, for example. No, I think we're living in a moment with media. It is Spain, it is everywhere, very polarized, with the information and opinion getting too mixed. And I think, our marketing campaign, our motto was subscribe to the facts. We have been reinforcing this idea of facts, that for me it's even more important than truth. I mean, the New York Times, they talk much more about truth. I think that people right now need at least to agree in the facts, and that's the biggest problem. Truth is very subjective many times, but facts should be facts at least, no? So all our communication, marketing, but also reality, and that's where data also has an important role, because I mean, data is the deepest way of showing facts. So yeah, I mean, going back to the question, I would say at this stage, no way a transactional approach is the one that is going to drive success. I think it's still, but for sure, at one point, if you want to grow, you for sure you need to start putting the price down a couple of weeks and see what happens. So playing with all these tools. I mean, this is going to happen more and more, because I'm sure it has been very successful during these months, but at one point things slow down, and you need to start playing with other tools.
I mean, you talked about closing down some verticals, but I'm interested in particular in health and science, which you talked about being El País's strengths. And there's a question from Yeni Kangesniemi, who's at Housing and Salamat, looking at premium products, and in particular premium health and welfare articles. Yeah. And has your relationship with health and science reporting as a driver subscriptions been changed by the pandemic? And are you planning to experiment more with premium health and science content after COVID? If such a world exists.
This is an interesting question, because we don't believe too much in this idea of premium. We decided to go to a metered paywall because we thought everything should be premium, and I think that's first. I think it's a very different mental approach when you start putting pressure on yourself to put the standards up and believe that everything should be premium, and not creating like two categories of content inside of your own brand or your own website. If you have something premium, that means something is not premium. Something is like second category. So I would say science content should be premium, a live blog should be premium, a tweet should be premium, and that's a big change, because for me, the main message we should be sending, and we're sending right now to the newsroom, is that we have to care so deeply about the content we put online, the way we cared so deeply for so many years as the content we put in print. So, and that has not been for a long time. That, okay, this is digital, you can make a mistake, you can change it afterwards, you can do something short, and without context. It's just breaking news. I don't think this is a good idea. I think you have to go premium as a whole.
Have you been tempted to have a philosophy where some information will always be free in the public interest? At the moment in the pandemic, government announcements for lockdown, and going forward, especially if you're reporting in Latin America, kind of reporting that you feel would be a public service in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we are doing right now with part of our COVID content. I think we should use this only for very, very specific situations. So I would say that's not the road we're gonna take. I think we need to be clear in our message and in our strategy. And of course, if there is a huge snow in Madrid that it's altering all our lives, and we need, or we have that. I mean, I think journalism is a public service by its own definition. So the same way as I said, everything should be premium. I think everything should have like a service journalism approach. So for sure, we're gonna do from time to time that kind of, we're gonna take that kind of decisions, but we shouldn't be playing to that game very often.
It's the exception rather than the...
Yeah, it's going to be the exception, yeah.
To ask a little bit about the communities you're building with your subscribers model, and a question from Borja Echevarría, who's from Radio Ambulante, and how important is it for you to create these communities around your journalism? So are you doing anything to connect the readers and subscribers amongst themselves? Or is their relationship purely...
No, yeah. I mean, I wish we had the experience and that sense of community that Radio Ambulante has. They are amazing. I love Radio Ambulante. And I believe this is part, or this is one of the biggest challenges. We have, we have a community, but really without doing, it has become like natural, but we really haven't worked in it. We have a community that we didn't speak to them like on a daily basis. We have a community because that community has grown by itself, but really there hasn't been, and not on digital, and a strategy like of finding a way to communicate with the community, to talk to them. I think as a legacy company that in some ways is very institutional, that is very afraid many times to speak transparently, I think we feel uncomfortable when we talk to the community. We are afraid, and nowadays it's very easy to be afraid because at the minimum mistake, you get like a lot of pushback. So what I would say is it's not natural in ourselves. I think it's fundamental that we work on that. I think we have a lot to learn from places like Radio Ambulante and other places in how to connect to your community. We're starting to establish like new ways of communication, like through newsletters or using a different tone on social networks. But honestly, we're going slowly and like being kind of careful.
Is that caution driven by the journalists themselves, or is it by...
I think it's not so much just driven by journalists itself. I think journalists, they don't have any problem speaking to the audience, but each of them, they speak in a completely different way. And and this has been in journalism such a hot topic in the last year. all how you establish rules in your newsroom of how people communicate, how much do they represent the brand or they represent their own themselves. So no, I think the caution comes much more from the culture, not the individuals, the corporation, the big structure, and I would say the lack of a clear strategy in how you face that new challenge.
I mean, this is true of the readers, but also kind of editorial strategy. And there's an ongoing conversation about when you have subscribers and membership model, which ways are the conversation flowing, and how much would you say editorial strategy is changing because of the presence of this subscription strategy?
Mm-hmm.
And how much should it change, and how much do you say no, we keep them completely?
Well, I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix. I think it needs to change, as you said before. And how are we gonna reach to younger audiences if we don't listen to them? Yeah. Today we have so many possibilities of knowing what's going on, or knowing how what people are interested in, and at the same time, I think intuition, I think your capacity to decide what are the issues or the topics you should expose to the audience, even if they don't know right now that it's so important for them, that continues to play a huge role. So how you balance both things, I think that's the right direction. For sure, you have to listen much more to the audience than what we have done over the years, for sure. I mean,
again, how does that play out in the newsroom? Do you get much pushback?
Okay, yeah. Sorry. You get some pushback. Because, I mean, we journalists tend to think that, I mean, that connects also to the idea of data and traffic. When they tell you, or someone tells you, well, I don't care if no one reads this story, but we have to do this story because it's important. And yeah, that may be the case sometimes, but if no one is reading your story, I mean, there is a problem. We have a problem there, or the story has no interest, and it's so common to hear that kind of things like, well, yeah, the audience is important, but it's much more important what I think matters. Also, yeah, you have that kind of pushback, much less than a decade ago, like in so many things. And that's part of our work, like to make people understand that looking at numbers or listening to the audience, that doesn't mean that everything that we're gonna do is because that's the demand. If not, everybody will be doing exactly the same content every day, as it has happened for so long time.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance. I remember having a conversation with the editor of the Financial Times, Rula Khalif, when she was world editor, saying almost the opposite, that she would commission a story on Syria even without the even if the numbers were low, because she felt it was important, but then look at how is it presented, how is it promoted.
Yeah, I think the problem is when they are too low. Something is wrong. I mean, I think this discussion, it's like very in the details. What does it mean low? What is the problem of that? Maybe the story was finally bad, or people didn't care, or maybe the problem was the presentation and how you took that story to the audience.
Nice, interesting. We're running out of time, but just there's been a few people asking about the paywall strategy because it's something you mentioned, and as you said, you kind of felt that it's not quite the main strategy for El País compared to subscriptions. And a question from Andrew Paxman overall, which is, why do you think El País waited so long to launch a paywall? And you know, Mexico's Reforma launched a paywall several years ago, and a lot of Spanish papers have not succeeded in this at all. And be really interested to know why you think this is the case.
Yeah. I think you have to go back in history, in digital history in Spain, because El País launched a paywall in 2002. Yeah. And many people don't remember that. El País was one of, I mean, it went a little bit through the same road at the New York Times, that they launched, then they took it down. So El País launched it in 2002. I think they had a paywall for, I was not working at El País, I was working at El Mundo, that's the main competitor. And there was such a big competition between El Mundo and El País for so many years that I think that competition delayed delayed launching a subscription model in Spain. So they were clearly like the two main biggest outlets. They were competing. When El País launched their paywall in 2002, El Mundo became the leader in Spain for many years. So when El País decided to put down their paywall, they spent many years trying to catch El Mundo. So that competition, I think it had a huge impact in why and it's a big reason why they didn't launch a paywall strategy before. And so many times, if the leaders, they don't move in a direction, no one is gonna move in that direction. So, and of course, launching a year ago, I mean, it was already so late. If you look at the numbers of how digital advertising has been going down, print advertising has been going down, print sales have been going down for so many years. I mean, at least I think we should have launched a couple of years before. But yeah, I mean, that's over.
Yeah.
And I think we have time to catch up.
I think so. I think it's interesting that it's basically a battle between two newspapers looking inwards, and the solution is ultimately to look outwards at the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much. We're on our last 2 minutes, and you've been incredibly generous with your time and also your expertise. And you've actually answered a lot of the questions in the chat. There were well over 50, but you've answered most of them already through the conversation. Okay. Thank you for your time. And next week, we're going to New Zealand to Sinead Boucher, who bought Stuff, the New Zealand media group, from its Australian owners for $1 last year, and then decided to take their content off Facebook platforms to see what happened. And it's a really fascinating story and a different reason. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mira. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.